and we'll start talking. Now, are either one of you guys familiar with this thing called jmeter? Do you know what that is?
I don't have any idea for that
No
as of
idea.
now.
Okay, Joanna?
Um, I have little idea. It's what I knew is it's about testing.
That's right.
It
That's right.
in uh,
That's good. Good.
it's usually used by QAs. That's what I
All right. So what we've done is we've gone and let me share my entire screen here for you. Okay, there. Um, what we've done is we've gone out and we've created a virtual machine on the infrastructure in the office to run and serve as a server um, in JMeter. Okay, and I know that we hadn't talked about it before as a team, but that's just something that has recently come up. Maynard wanted it because we needed to get metrics for some of our websites. So I've set it up as a remote desktop, and can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see
yes.
it.
Okay, good, good. So what we're talking about here is this is just an Ubuntu box that has JMeter installed. It's named JMeter. The user is JMeter, and the password is this one to get into the box. It's not. It's real simple. Okay, so you can refer back to this whenever you want, but it's basically JM, and then leet speak is what I call that, where you translate this stuff. Let me close this real quick. I'll show you how to connect to it. Oops. Let me get Ramina back up. Actually, so this is the IP address, and you have to be on the VPN to get to it. 192.168.159, and that's the JMeter server. You use the RDP protocol, y'all, from a just remote desktop, and you can get to it. This, let me change I thought I had changed the screen resolution, and we'll go ahead and connect. Now again, oh, that didn't help, did it? Restart it. Trying to get a bit of a wider picture. Now, if you see this, you can just hit escape and it'll go right in. All right. I have it auto set to load JMeter. It's not loading a test plan by default. So this is a brand new test plan. There are a couple saved out there, and I want to run through how to actually create a test plan with you guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, and sometimes I have to look for these, the default, what's called a thread group. Okay, so this is the main, the first thing you start with is a thread group, and notice this is a tree hierarchy. You start with a test plan, then you add a thread group. Inside the thread group, you tell it how many numbers of threads to run, how long it delays between each thread starts, and what the loop count is. In this case, we're just going to run one instance. That's pretty way it is. Let's say if I wanted to run 30 simultaneous users, I would just put that number in here. Okay. Now, under the thread group, which, by the way, we're going to rename this to mt-ldg, we're going to test a real ls.uat or dash and then dot markertracks.com. Okay, so we're going to test that endpoint. So I'm naming the thread group after that endpoint. Okay. All right. Now, under the thread group, the first thing you want to do is set up the defaults for all your HTTP requests. So we're going to add a config element, and that is called HTTP request defaults. Makes sense, right? So this is what, if you haven't specified it, this is all the parameters that are going to be used by every single request. Okay. So the server name we're going to use is this one. Where's my server? That's the, this doesn't look like it's, there we go. Server name, the port number in this case is 443. We always use our stuff, we always use port 443. You can set timeouts, so if a website's not responding, it doesn't hang. I don't do that typically here. We're going to tell it that we want by default HTTPS, and we haven't set, we're not going to set this. The path in this particular case for this test is, looking this up, ledger, identity, login. Okay. And then you can set parameters and stuff here, but this is just the defaults. Okay. We're not going to use a proxy server. Now, in this particular case, we don't necessarily need it, but I'm going to go ahead and put a cookie manager in here. We're going to add config element cookie manager. What this does is just manages cookies, and I like to clear the cookies on each iteration. So every time you run it, it resets the cookie. And then this particular case, we're going to add a header manager. Now we need a header manager because we're going to use authentication with this particular API call. So we're going to add config element, where is it? Header manager. Okay. And inside the header manager here, now we're going to set an API key like so. Let me see if I can copy and paste this. I doubt it, but we'll try. Oh, I can. All right. And then we're going to add one more element, and that's the content type. Okay. So if you need to specify a header, and we're going to make that application JSON. So if you need to add a header, this is how you would do that. Okay. Clicking this button here creates a JMX file, which is a jmeter XML file that saves the definition. You can see I've already got some installed here or set up here. All right. So we're just going to call this test plan testplan.jmx. Okay, which is the default. In this, normally what I do is I name them after the endpoint. Okay, that saves everything in the hierarchy. So including this. Now, it won't actually do anything because we haven't defined a request yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually define an HTTP request here. Where is it? Can't remember. Oh, logic controller, yeah. No. Sorry, give me a minute to find it. It's in this menu somewhere. HTTP, where's the HTTP request? I swear it was right here. Nope. There it is. Sorry, it's under the sampler thing. So HTTP request. Now in this particular case, it's going to look a lot very similar to the request defaults up here. So we're actually going to take the URL and put it in here. And we're going to put the port number in here, which is 443. Now, again, if I leave it blank, it'll take the default from this defaults page, okay? We're going to set this implementation to HTTP client 4. I don't know why. I think that's the Java implementation. The protocol is going to be HTTPS, and we're going to use a post, because if you don't, it won't work. And then we're going to put ledger. You don't have to put this in twice, but I had obviously misspelled it before, so this will override. So remember, anything here, not here, is pulled from the request defaults. Anything that's here overrides it. Okay, so login. We're going to accept any redirects automatically. We're going to use a keep alive, and then we're actually going to use some body data instead of parameters to create the request. And this is a test credentials from LEM. So this is going to actually do a request with a post that does LEM's request. Now, let's go back up to the test plan and save it again, and then run this. Notice nothing happens, but it ran, but you don't see any output. It's because we didn't actually add to this test plan any output. So what we're going to do is add a postpress, where is it? A listener that says view results in a table. So once we view the results in the table and then I hit run, you're actually going to see that request come up in this particular, so that actually ran that. All right, and you notice the status was success. Now here's the surprising thing. It took 914 milliseconds to do this login request. Okay, now one of the things that we can do is we can go a little bit deeper into this and configure stuff to save. So we're going to save it as this particular, we're going to create a log file. We're going to save it as XML. Okay, 1 second. And these fields that are tagged as XML, it will save results in the XML, but you must be saving as XML, otherwise it will not. So what I want to see are the response headers, and I want to see the response data. That's the most important thing for me. I want to see what I got back and what the response codes and all that were. We're not going to save the sampler data, and I don't care about the assertion results right now. And let's do that, and then let's go ahead and put a file name in here. And this is going to be in my home directory, mtld, in that XML file. Okay. All right. Again, we'll save. Go back to the test plan, save this, and then we're going to run this again. Now, I'm going to show you something interesting. If you use this button right here, this clears all your results. All right. That way, because if you run with a window with an results open, and you run it twice, you're going to get 2 results in the window, but they're 2 separate runs. So this is how you clean up between runs, is using that clear all button. Okay? Is that you, Chris?
Yes, it is.
All right. You're going to
I have
have
it.
to go back and read or watch the video to
Okay.
catch up. All right.
Okay.
So we're at the point where I'm actually going to save the test results in a table here. All right? And we can see those results. And again, I put them in my home directory, and you'll notice there's this report here. We're going to open it with the text editor. You can see it actually keeps all the request data. Now, these are, and it's kind of interesting, this is the response data is what you're looking for when it comes to seeing what comes back from the requests. The response, you notice this has got URL encoded data in it. So viewing this inside of a browser or some kind of HTTP encoding aware and XML encoding aware uh, tool will give you a better view of this. But anyway, that's how you would go out and you'd look. Now this is again a Linux box. So, but okay, so it's not very useful to only run a single request at one time, right? So let's ramp this up. Now remember, let's go ahead and run this real quick. We're seeing response times. Where is it? Oops, I didn't have this full screen. There we go. We're seeing latencies in 900 milliseconds. And for those of you who don't know, a millisecond is a thousandth of a second. So this is almost a full second, taking almost a full second. And of that, 128 milliseconds is about a tenth of it is just the connect time. And that's the whole length of the run. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear now remember this, our latency, overall latency, in this case was bad. It's 1.7 seconds. That's not good. That's really slow. Now down at the bottom, you'll see the results, and it says here's the latest sample, and there's the average duration. All right, so we're going to clear this again. Now we're going to go back here, and I want 10 users simultaneously hitting this. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 1 second ramp up time, and then I'm going to run this and show the results in the table. Okay, and you can see the latency after multiple requests has gone up significantly. So now we need to use these kinds of things to benchmark our endpoints and see how well we're doing performance-wise, right? It's also valuable to see this stuff in a graph format. You can add a listener that shows you the results in the graph. So what we're going to do is give me a summary. First off, trying to decide which one to use. There we go. We'll just do a graph results summary. Notice it doesn't have any values in it. So if we clear again and go ahead and run that. Now, this is interesting because what you're seeing here is the data. These little data points. Okay? You can see them. It's really hard to see on this screen, but the interesting thing about this is it gives you the throughput down here. 189 requests per minute. That's only about 3 requests per second. That's not very fast, if you think about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this test plan, and I want to show you one that is quick. Probably this one. Yeah, okay, so this is going to go against the MTUA API, okay, but it doesn't actually log in. All it's going to hit is the V1 endpoint, okay? So all we're hitting is the V1 endpoint. There's no, just a get, and what we're going to do is we're going to show how long it takes. See, this is much quicker. Look at the latency. Sub 3 digits most of the time. So it's 100 milliseconds versus over 1,000. The difference is that back-end API is actually hitting a database, the login API. This particular API is not doing anything. It's just saying, I'm alive. Okay? You can see the results here. Now, this is the graph that I wanted to show you earlier. You can, the data is not really that useful because it shows a little dot for every single request, and that's just confusing. What I like to see is the throughput graph, and that cleans it up. So you can see clearly how fast you ramped up, and this is what the latency is for the particular thing. There's another cool graph I'd like to show you, and it's called, this one's really interesting. Let's see, it should be this guy right here. It's in alpha, but so if we hit this guy, you'll see this graph that it's building down here. That's a graph of how many responses are responding in how much time. Uh, so most of our responses are in this curve right here, which are happening 50 milliseconds 50% of the time, and then within 70 milliseconds or less 90% of the time. So this is a really quick API. I'm going to go back to the other test plan. This is the one we were working on and we were building. You see that? And I'm going to actually add the same distribution post-processor, or I'm sorry, it's a listener, my bad. We're going to call the distribution graph. So now we're actually adding outputs. So these are the 3 outputs to this test plan. Okay. Now let's go ahead and run this test. See if we get a response. Sometimes this is an alpha, by the way, so sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Okay, not sure what the problem is with that. Probably the HTTP or the number. It will not update until it hits 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 20, and then we'll try this test again and see if we actually get an update. And there it goes. Okay. But it's not actually showing the output. But you can see that we're actually hitting between 2 and 6 seconds on a latency. And the last one to run ran in 6 seconds. So that's an example of how we use this tool to generate reports. Now this is I like the graph results here, because if you look here, the plain graph results, remember I said data is not that useful, and all I really want to see is the throughput, and you can see the throughput graph. Now this is in time, how the latency, and there's a few when it first starts up that really took a long time, but this is the number of samples going this direction. Obviously, we did not run a very long test. Now, one of the things I can do, and let's talk about this field here, not that one, the loop count. How many times does it repeat the request? So if we change this to 10, we're going to run 20 threads with 10 requests. How many is that? That's going to be 200. All right. So let's again rerun this. This should take considerably longer. Yeah, okay. So you can see it's running, and it's giving you this is a pretty flat curve. So all the requests are taking the same amount of time. 90% of them are completing under 5 seconds. So this is one of the ways we measure latency and SLAs. What's called an SLA is a service level agreement. This is what we've agreed to meet for our customers. We're going to respond in X amount of milliseconds or X amount of seconds, or we'll be able to handle X amount of requests in a specific time. Now you can see this is actually running over time. So let's look at the results graph, and you see the throughput is going up. Now let's do the average. So this is the average time. You can see it peaks and then tails off, and this is probably because of the ramp up time that we've set, and we're actually hitting that. All right, you can write this stuff to a file, then parse it. By the way, the file type can be CSV or whatever, so it can be CSV, XML, or whatever, and then you can actually go and save those. Now, questions. I know this is complex. I really wanted to just cover something real fast. Now, I'm going to go back and show you guys how to log in and log out of this box. This server is, again, a RDP server that's running in the data center or in the office, and this is the IP address 192.168.159, and the credentials used for that are actually jmeter, and it's jmeter with leet speak, so it's JM3T3R is the password, and you can set your own. I mean, I'm using a different tool than you guys will probably use. You guys will probably use just regular RDP, but and I'm actually only using high color. That's just to save bandwidth because I'm going over the VPN. So once you connect, this is what you get. Now this pops up. This is a bug in the XRDP protocol. All you have to do is hit escape twice, and then it comes up to the test plan, and you're able to use it just fine. All right, now, again, these files can be saved and opened. All right, the one we were just working on was called test plan. It is actually the same test plan that I was working on with the previous run, which is this one here. It should look pretty much the same, but you notice I've got a distribution graph and an aggregate graph and a response time graph. So if we run this with the response time graph showing, for some reason this one doesn't actually work. Again, I think it's because I'm not keeping all of the. You have to actually keep response times. Yeah, see, I'm not saving the response time. Where is it? See, the latency is in there, so I'm not sure why it's not actually doing it. Yeah. That's just saying there isn't enough data. So, and let's see how many threads we're running. Oh, let's run 10 requests per thread, 30 threads at 10 requests. You can see this is the graphs that it generated, and this is the. Now remember, if you want to clear all the data out, including the graphs, you just hit the little sweeper icon. That clears all. You can clear the current page, or you can clear every page. All right, let me see. No value. Good. Now we're going to run this, and then we'll say display graph. Starting to see values now. Now this just tells you that aggregate, and this is useful to test to make sure your tests are succeeding. It shows you what your throughput is, and it shows you what your error rates are. Okay, this is the number of samples, that's the average, this is the median, this is the 90%, 95%, 99% line. So 99% of the requests are completing in 6.5 seconds. All right, we can look at the distribution graph. That basically shows the same data in a different way. The response time graph, is so there you go. That's Maynard asking me for pricing. This, and you can see the response time graph for that particular run, and then this is again the cool. I like this graph. That's the throughput graph, which is kind of crazy, but I like. This shows you the average of the throughput, the average time response time. So it shows you a graph as it ramps up, and then this is the table. So this table actually, again, we're recording it to an XML file here, and this table will actually show an entry for every single request that completes. And some of these are taking quite a long time. Notice they're 12 seconds long. So, we can. It's possible we broke it, but you would see that in the status field. So we're getting a successful response, but it's actually the longest samples are going for 12 seconds. Okay? All right. Now, I know some of this is probably not familiar to most of you, so feel free to ask me any questions that you've got. Questions? Anyone? Anyone? This will also run, okay. Nobody is answering. Just say no questions. That way I know you guys are still there.
Matt,
Yeah.
Matt, I was sorry, I was late, but uh, what is w- w- uh, where do you use that jmeter?
We're
What
using
is it for?
we use this for load testing
Load testing of what?
of our infrastructure.
Okay.
So if
The
you
the the whole
we've
the, the whole Kubernetes structure.
yeah, well, any app, this is web infrastructure testing. So basically, if you've got something running on Kubernetes, you'll be testing Kubernetes at the same time. If you've got something that's um, I wanted to show you guys these files can actually be shared and put into version control if you want it. So the files that I'm talking are the JMX, the plan files. So for example, if we pull this one up, you notice that I'm just loading and saving it in the GUI. You can run this from the command line as well. And that is, let me see if I can remember how to do that. So I'm in the home directory here. Now that means they can be croned as well. So we can use these reports to do monitoring as well, and testing and monitoring. And we're talking about we've only scratched the surface. You can go in and create multiple HTTP requests that do a login, that do a lookup, and things like that, and all of those things. So basically, you can also script. You can set up jmeter as an HTTP proxy, then run through set a browser to point to that proxy, and it'll record a test scenario for you that you can use based on what you do in the browser. I haven't tried that yet, so I haven't showed you guys that. It's pretty advanced, but if you look, these are what the test plans are nothing but XML. So you can actually go in here and make changes to the test plan. For example, you can change the number of threads, change the ramp time, and change the where is it? Iteration loops, so that you can change the iteration count and the whole 9 yards just by changing this file and then saving it. Then you can run it. Oh, this terminal. Sorry. Then you can actually run it by running the command jmeter. I think it's -n for non-GUI, and then the test plan. Got to remember what the argument is. T. So. And you can see it's actually running from the command line. And this kind of outputs a regular, and and look, we're actually seeing some errors there. 67 errors. Now it runs faster from the command line than it does from the GUI, obviously. So if you want to run this stuff for performance, real performance testing, you want to probably do it from the command line. Okay, but look how many. This is 4,000 requests with 670 errors. So that's pretty dang good, and it ran pretty fast. Look at the per second average. So that test plan that just hits the endpoint. Now again, you can set the test plan up in the GUI. So let's this is what that test plan looks like running in the GUI versus from the command line. So you can set a test plan up here, save it, and then run it from the command line. So there's a couple samples out here. I encourage you guys to go test it and play with it. Chris, you're going to have to go back and um, you're going to have to go back out and watch the entire video just to get the setup stuff. Okay.
Okay, okay.
I
Thanks.
looks like I'm going to have to jump off and go deal with some questions from our boss, Maynard. So I will get back with you. If you guys have further questions, just post them in the MTX Info channel. Okay?
Okay, Matt, thank you.
You got it,
Were
guys.
you Matt? Were you able to record the video?
Yes.